welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing something super exciting, and that is I will be showing you step by step how you could create your very own children's storybook, just like this one, from scratch and have it published on Amazon KDP. I will be giving you very detailed instructions in terms of how you could be setting up your book template and your margins for both your cover and interior. And I will be walking through various methods you could consider in terms of illustrating your storybook. And I will also show you the very final step of having your book uploaded and published on Amazon KDP. So if you've always dreamed of becoming a children's storybook author and be able to publish something just like this one, then this video is for you. And make sure you stay until the end because I'll be showing you a lot of tips and tricks throughout the video, so you definitely don't want to miss them. And if you enjoyed this video, I hope you will give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more. And let's get started.
You should always create all of your interior page designs first before you start to create the book cover. The reason for that is because once you have your interior pages completed, it will be a lot easier for you to design a cover that encompasses the overall look and feel of your story. In addition, you need to know how many pages your story will have in order to generate the correct book cover size, because the number of pages you have will dictate the thickness of your book cover spine. Let me now show you how to get started with creating the interior of our children's storybook. The first step is we want to come to the KDP website. Under their help topics, they have a page that talks about trim size, bleeds, and margins. This link I have also linked below in the description section of this video, so you can easily reference it when you go ahead and make your coloring book interior. So what we want to do now is scroll down from here, and the section we're looking for is the section called bleed. And there we go. So when we say that the interior has no bleed, that means there is a little white space all around each of your pages, essentially creating a border around your graphic and text elements on each page. When we say that the interior is with bleed, that means there is no white border around your page and your graphic or text elements essentially bleed to the edge of each of your pages. So in the context of a children's storybook, what that means is in the case of no bleed, there will be a white border around your illustrations on all pages, and if you choose with bleed, then your illustrations will fill up the entire page with no border around it. For purposes of a children's storybook, I would highly recommend selecting with bleed because you would want your illustrations to cover the entire page. Okay, so what we need from here is once we decided we want bleed or no bleed, then we'll come down here to the tables. We want to pick the one that says examples of page size with and without bleed for kdpamazon.com because the one below it is for Japan, so likely not applicable for most of you as well. So we're going to expand this and you'll see a table down here. So what this table tells us is the page size and dimension that we'll need to put into Canva later to help set up our interior pages, because we want to make sure that we set up the page properly so that we don't run into issues when we upload it to KDP for printing later. Because we had picked with bleed, we'll have to look at this column here. Now you will need to decide on the dimensions of your children's storybook. This decision is entirely up to you and there is really no right or wrong answer. For illustration purposes though, let's say we want our book to be 8.5 by 8.5 inches. But we won't look at this column because we had chosen with bleed. We'll need to look at the corresponding column on this side. So we will have to put in this number into Canva later. So now let us hop on over to Canva to put this in. Okay, so what you want to do is log into Canva, which I've already done so here. And for those of you who are not familiar with Canva, this is basically a very powerful online design tool with a huge selection of design elements, templates, and features that you can use to bring your creative vision to life for anything from notebooks to posters to social media content or even children's storybooks. So first of all, make sure you log in, and if you haven't already gotten your account set up, you will need to set one up. I have included a link below this video where you can sign up for your Canva account. And there are basically two options when it comes to Canva. There's the free account where there's no time limit, but you don't have access to as many creative elements. And then you can also sign up for a 30-day free trial of the pro account. This will give you access to Canva's entire library of design elements and features. And after the 30-day trial period, you can decide if you want to pay for it on an ongoing basis, or you can also choose to downgrade back to the free option. Okay, so now that we're in Canva, we'll want to set up the page. And we're going to use the dimensions that I had just shown you from the KDP page earlier, which is the 8.625 inches by 8.75 inches. So let's go ahead and put that in. So we're going to put create a design, and then we're going to put custom size, and then we're going to have to change this pixels to inches. This is a very important step, so please don't forget that. And then we're going to put that in 8.625 by 8.75. And we're going to say create a design. And our page is set up with the right dimensions. Now we're not completely done yet because we also need to now set up the margins just to make sure we know where the margins are so that we make sure whatever critical elements we have do not get cut off during printing. So we're going to come back to the same page that I was showing you earlier, and now we're going to go to margin instead. So we're going to scroll down to where they talk about the margins here. So there we go. So under the margin section, you'll see a table here. So under the table, you'll see page count. So this is where we want to look for. Now you will need to make sure you reference the correct row depending on how many pages you think your children's storybook is going to end up with. As you can see, the page ranges here are huge, and realistically, in most cases, children's storybooks are not likely to exceed 150 pages. So I think we can safely assume our final storybook is going to end up somewhere between 24 to 150 pages, as noted in the first row of the table here. Also, keep in mind, to get your book printed on Amazon KDP, you will need to have at least 24 pages, which means we will need these margins. But then again, remember that we had asked for with bleed, so for outside margin, we'll need to use this column as opposed to this column, and an inside margin will be the same, regardless whether you use bleed or no bleed. So basically, we need 0.375 inches on the inside margins, and also 0.375 inches on the outside margins. So remember that number, and now we're going to hop back over to Canva to put those margins in. As you can see, I already have rulers here. Some of you, when you load your page, if you don't have the rulers yet, you can press the shortcut, which is Shift plus R, and that should bring the rulers out. So what we want to do is to try to drag the margin out to around 0.375, which was what the table had asked for. And it doesn't have to be exact. It's better to be slightly over than be slightly under. So I'm going to do 0.376, and I'm good with that. And so what we can do is also zoom in a little bit more, and I'm going to come to elements here, and I'm going to come to shapes, and I'm going to grab a square. So I'm going to take this square, and I'm going to make the size to be equivalent to the first margin that I had created that I know was accurate. And now I'm just going to take the square, copy and paste it, and I'm gonna use this to help drag my margins. And I'm gonna move the same square over here, and I'm gonna drag that margin over here to match that square, because then I know this will be 0.375. And likewise for the bottom part, I'm going to drag from the ruler another margin down here to match the square. And now I have all four sides of my margins completed. So now I can delete these squares because I don't need them anymore. For purposes of our tutorial today, I will be focusing on the overall layout, designs, illustrations, and publishing aspects of creating a children's storybook. However, I thought I should still share a few quick tips regarding the written component of your children's story. Firstly, you should make sure it is age appropriate. So think about who your target audience is going to be before you start writing so you can tailor the content, themes, language, and reading level to that particular age group. For example, if your book is meant for younger children, then you should use simple words and sentence structures. Secondly, you want to make sure the story is written in an engaging and captivating manner so that kids would want to read through the entire book from cover to cover. Generally, a children's book should have relatable characters, a distinctive beginning, middle, and end, and involves the main character either facing a conflict or obstacle that they need to try to overcome or resolve throughout the story. Lastly, if you don't have any ideas in terms of what you want to write about, then I would recommend you can take a look at other children's storybooks at your local library, or you can even ask ChatGPT for an idea or two. Now let us explore a few different options that you could consider when it comes to book illustrations. The easiest way, but likely also the most costly way, is to hire a professional illustrator to help design your characters and illustrate your book for you. If this is an option you want to consider, you could check out freelancing websites such as Upwork or Fiverr to find an illustrator that would suit your needs. Always remember to check out their portfolio as well as their star ratings and reviews from previous customers before you decide whom you want to hire. Another option is to illustrate your storybook using artificial intelligence. There are actually many options you could choose from when it comes to illustrating with AI these days. You could consider Midjourney, which is a paid platform that can generate intricate character designs and backgrounds, or you could consider Leonardo AI, which is a very good free option, or even ChatGPT-4, which I personally find is the easiest AI method to create consistent characters. If creating your storybook illustrations with AI is what you prefer, then please check out two of my previous videos, which I have linked in the description below, which will teach you step by step how to generate consistent characters and illustrate your storybook using Midjourney as well as ChatGPT-4. The final option I will be showing you is how you can use existing graphic elements and layer them together to create unique and original scenes for your storybook illustrations. To find existing graphic elements to use for your storybook characters, you could either purchase them from third-party websites like Creative Fabrica, which has a massive catalog of graphic elements you could choose from, or you could leverage existing elements that are found within Canva. So if you want to use Canva elements for your storybook characters, then you would want to search for elements that have multiple poses so that you could use them throughout the storybook. So what I would recommend is adding multiple poses to whatever you're searching for. So for example, if I want to find a duck as my character, I would want to make sure it has multiple poses. I will go duck, multiple poses, and see what happens. And it's a bit of a trial and error. You'll have to see what comes up and determine if that would be a feasible choice. So let's scroll down and see what we can find. And right away, you already see this one duck that has multiple poses, which is a great candidate for a storybook character just because you can really leverage these graphics to build out your story. And if at first you don't see something so obvious, you can also try to click on the element itself. And sometimes when you click on it, there'll be something called magic recommendations. When you go to see all, you actually see this duck also has multiple poses that you could leverage. So let's say if you do like this duck and you're going to use that as your character for your storybook, what you would want to do is basically select all of these graphics and lay them all on a page so that later on, as you're building out your storybook, you can easily reference them and drag them onto your pages to create the scenes that you need. So I'm not going to do all of them, but this is what you would want to do. And if instead of using Canva elements, you're actually planning to use the Creative Fabrica elements that you had purchased, then you would do a very similar thing. What you would want to do is pay for the graphics and then download them. And once you've downloaded them, you would actually want to upload them onto Canva and lay them on a page similar to what I've shown you just now, just so you can easily reference them as you build out the storybook. So in my case, I have already selected the character that I want to use for the storybook, which is this bear here, following the same steps that I had just shown you earlier. And I've laid them out all on a page. And just to show you the potential of what could be created following the method that I'm going to show you, I have actually created the entire storybook already, but I'm going to come back and show you how you could create something similar. And with just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different poses, I managed to create this. And as you can see, when you look across the different pages, it's not really obvious that I'm reusing some of the bear poses. And that is the magic of adding in different backgrounds, different elements, and layering them so that you're actually creating a unique scene on each page. But if you look closely, you could see that, for example, this pose is the same as this pose. But when you look at them, they look like two completely different scenes. Another example is this pose is actually the same as this pose, except I think I had flipped this one over horizontally so they're facing a different direction. But again, it looks like a completely different scene. So I'm going to show you some of the tips and tricks that you would be able to leverage as well as you're building out your storybook, even though we only have 8 different poses to choose from. So let's get started. Alright, so let's hop back out of this view, and I'm going to show you how we could build out a scene just like some of the other pages you've seen earlier. Now let's start with a blank page, and depending on the scene you're trying to create, you would want to select the bear pose that makes the most sense. So for example, let's say in this case, I want to depict the bear walking across a beautiful forest. So maybe this one makes the most sense, and then I'll copy that and paste it on the page that I'm working on. And now I need the forest background. So there are multiple ways you could get this. You could either go to other sites like Creative Fabrica, just make sure whatever site you download it from that you have the license to use it, or you can use the existing Canva element. So if you search for forest and then you go to graphics. There will be a lot you could choose from. Alternatively, you can also go to Magic Media, which is one of the AI capabilities, and you can actually just put in a prompt and it will try to create that image for you using AI. So let's say I want a magical forest background. I could just put that there, and then you get to pick a style. So I think in this case it makes sense to use, let me try dreamy, see what happens. And we're going to generate the image. And so it'll usually give you 4 options to choose from. In this case, they're pretty similar. Or if you don't like them, you can always generate again. But let's say I'm okay with them, and I'm going to pick this one just to see what it looks like and just to show you. What you want to do is to bring it all the way to the edges of the page. Then you want to send this to the back layer. So send it to the back because that's our background. So now the bear is going to be in front of it. There we go. If this scene is too boring, we want to add something else. We can either go back to the regular elements here and search for it. So let's say if I want to see an apple in the scene, I could put apples in, put it on his head. Or if I'm trying to search for something, I can't find it in the existing elements, which is unlikely because they have a lot of elements in Canva. You can come back to Magic Media and just generate what it is that you cannot find. So let's say if I want to get basket of fruits, and let's use the same style and try to generate the image. And let's try this. So you'll see that this one comes with a background. You don't want that. So what you can do is go to Edit Photo and go to BG Remover, which stands for Background Remover. Click on that and it should remove the background. There you go. So you see the background has now been removed. So you can just place it wherever you want, assuming you like this. But let's say if I don't like this and I want to go back to elements and search for whatever it is that I want. Let's say I want him to be interacting with a duck. Then I can go to the elements and see what duck I could find that would make sense. Again, you want to make sure the animation style is very similar on the page because, for example, this bear has no black outline, nor does the forest behind him. So we don't want to get another character or element that has black outlines around it or just doesn't fit the overall theme of the picture because then it won't look realistic. So you want to make sure you find something that actually goes with the existing scene that you've created. And let's see what I would want to use. So for example, putting this there won't really make sense because this looks very realistic and my bear doesn't look realistic. So let's see what I can find actually. I can put this duck in there. And let's say I want this duck to be lying on him, like taking a nap on the bear. And let's say if I still want a basket of fruits for whatever reason, again, you need to find a style that makes sense for the overall animation style you already have here. So this one would work. So I'm going to put some apples here. So let's say you're happy with this scene, but as you can see, once you start adding different elements, you can easily create a completely different scene, even though your bear pose is the same from page to page. Now I'm going to show you how you can add text as well, because you need text in your story. So let's say, one day, Sally the bear found a basket of apples, and I'm just gonna change this to white. And this is another trick. So depending on your background color, if it's a dark color, then you want to use a light font so that it stands out. And I'm gonna just edit the size a little bit. See, or you can put it down here as well, wherever you want to put the text, because in this case, the background is a bit darker, so you want to use a white font. If you use a black font, it might get camouflaged and you can't really read it that well. So that's another trick that you should keep in mind. Or if in some cases where part of the background is light and part of the background is dark and it doesn't make sense to use either black or white, then the other trick I'm going to show you is you want to come to elements and you want to go to shapes. And you're going to come here, grab a shape, turn the shape to white color, and now layer the shape in between your words, which it already is, and your background. And now what you want to do is edit the transparency of this box that you just created. So go to these 3 dots, go to this transparency icon, and drag it down a little bit. So now you can see the words, and then even though it's black against a dark background, because you have this transparency layer against it, which looks coherent with the overall design, you can actually read the words very well. So this is another trick that you can keep in mind as you're building out your storybook. As you can see throughout my story, I have different colored fonts depending on what the background color is. So in these cases where the background color is darker, I used white font. In this case where the background color is lighter, I used black font. And in this case, because there's this painting that's darker, but then this side is lighter, it's hard to decide if I should use black or white. So that's why I used the trick that I just showed you where I added a transparent box underneath the font just so you can read it easily. Another important thing to keep in mind as you're building out your scenes for each of your pages is to make sure you look at the margins as well, because anything that is outside of these margins that we had set up earlier could potentially be cut off at the time of printing. So you wouldn't want any of your main character elements to be sitting outside of the margins. So for example, if I did this, then it's highly likely that the bear paws would be cut off by the time I get the printed book. So you wouldn't want any of that to happen. So always make sure that your main elements are within the margins. The background going beyond it is okay, but just make sure none of the elements or your text are outside of the margins. So using the same tricks and method that I showed you just now, you will go ahead and illustrate the rest of the pages for your storybook until you completely finish your interior. So once you're happy with the interior, what you would need to do is to download it. So in order to do this, first I'm going to take out this illustration page, but what you want to do is click on share and go to download, and what you want to save it as is PDF print, and you would want to flatten the PDF, and yes, you want to include all the pages, and in my case I would want to do CMYK, which is best for professional printing. This is only available if you have a Canva Pro account, and if you don't, you can just use RGB. It should still work properly, but I would recommend using CMYK if you can. Now click on download. And once you have it downloaded, you're ready to move on to creating your cover. Before we start designing our coloring book cover, we will first need to set up the cover template in Canva. What you want to do now is hop onto Amazon KDP cover calculator, and I will include the link in the description section of this video so you can easily reference it later. So what we want to do now is to enter in the information that's prompted on this form so that KDP can generate the appropriate book cover size and template for us. So let's start with the first one, binding type. In my case, I'm going to create a paperback. Interior type, given we're now creating a children's storybook, no longer a journal or a coloring book, we would want to select premium color instead of black and white. Paper type, there's only one option in this case, which is white paper. Page turn direction will be from left to right, and measurement units, always pick inches. And as you might recall, when we were designing our interior, we had set that we wanted our dimensions of the book to be 8.5 by 8.5, so we want to select that. And in page count, let's go back and check the interior that we had just generated just to see how many pages we have. So we have 30 pages. So let's go back here and put in 30. So once we've entered all that information, we can click on Calculate Dimensions. And as you can see, KDP has now generated all the dimensions relating to our book cover. What we want to do here is to click on Download Template. So once you have the template, I would open it up, and as you can see, the overall dimensions, this is the number that you'll need to go back to KDP now to enter for our cover template. So remember 17.320 times 8.750. So let's come back over here to Canva, create a design. We're going to do custom size. Make sure you change pixels to inches, and we are going to put it in 17.320 by 8.755. And we're going to click on Create New Design. So now we have this generated. What we want to do is go back to the file that was generated from Amazon KDP. Click on the PNG file, and we want to copy this and hop back over to Canva and click paste. So this should technically fit exactly because this is how we generated the dimensions of this Canva page to align exactly to the dimensions noted here. So all you need to do is just drag it out until it hits the edge and we're good and ready to go. So in the interest of time, I have already created a book cover just so you can see what it would look like. And now I'm going to show you how to replicate this exact book cover just so you'll have the skills to create your own book cover when you design your storybook. So as you can see, what we want to do is start off with a background. So in this case, we put in a forest background. You can really use any background that fits your story theme. But in this case, I'm going to come to Elements and I'm going to take the forest background that I had in mind and I'm going to drag it out. Now, as you can see, the moon is actually in the center, but in this case, I want it to be in the center of the front cover. So this is the front cover, this is the back cover. And so I'll have to show you a trick that I use to do that. So I'm going to move it over to where I want the moon to be, which is more in the center of the page, or I mean, more of the center of the front cover. And when you want to see where the front cover line is, you can bring down the transparency of this background layer just so you can see through it. So you'll see that this is the dividing between the front and the back cover. So it looks like it is quite centered. So now what I'm going to show you is a magic trick using AI, Canva's AI capabilities to expand this. So I'm going to go to here, click on these stars, and I'm going to click on Magic Expand. So what that would do, and I'm going to leave it at free form, and I'm going to drag it out. So this is basically telling Canva, I want it to create this part that is missing here that would be coherent with the rest of the existing background. So let's see what it comes up with. Sometimes you'll have to be patient and try a few times before you get to the results that you want, but let's see. And this is pretty good. This is actually really good. So this part of the background did not exist before. And basically I asked Canva's AI capability to create this part of the background so that it blends in with the rest of the existing background. And usually it gives you 4 options to choose from. They are relatively similar in this case, and I'm pretty happy with this one, so I'm going to just use this. So what we can do is come back here and let's see how it is. And we click on done and there we go. Pretty good. So what we can do is bring down the transparency of this layer again just so we can see through. And the critical part of this is we want to see through because we want to make sure none of our critical elements, for example, when we add the bear later or any of the title, the font, and the words, we want to make sure none of those key elements go over any of these margins, which is the pink area, as well as over the spine. And the yellow part here is the barcode. So anything you put in this area will also get covered by the barcode. So it is best to put this layer into somewhat of a transparency layer so that you can see through it and make sure nothing goes over the margins and the barcode. Okay, so now we want to create the rest of the cover just like this one. I'm going to go down and grab the bear. So I'm going to take this one, which is the same as this. I just need to flip it around. And I'm going to go to flip horizontal, drag it a little bit bigger, put it in the spot that I want it to be. That looks pretty good. Now, as you can see, I also have a bear in the back cover. So in this case, this one has a tree. And this one doesn't have a tree here. And the reason is because I used AI to create this section of the background. And last time when I created it, it gave me a tree trunk. This time it didn't, but really it does not matter. And so I'm going to put this bear that's sitting down in the back cover right here. And now I'm going to add the apples. So I'm going to search for apples. I'm going to put some, I think I had one here, then I have one here. Not going to be exactly the same, but I just wanted to show you the idea of how I managed to create that initial book cover, just so you can apply the same skills and the same techniques to do your book cover. I'm going to send this back one layer just so it's behind this other apple. And I'm going to copy this other apple. I think I had 2 over here, smaller. And just to make it a little bit more natural, I'm going to tilt this a little bit just so they're not all so upright. Let me tilt this one the other way. And then there's an apple on his head, so I'm going to add that apple on his head as well. There we go. Now I think we have most of the graphic elements on the page already. Now add in the words. So what you want to do is go to text, add a heading, and I think the font I use here is Berthold Block. So I'm going to use the same font right here. So the name of my story is There Is No Place Like Home. So there is no place like. And I'm going to change the colors later, but I just want to do this part first. And then using the same font, I'm going to write home, but just make it bigger. Now I'm going to add some effects to the text, change the font color. So I'm going to go to font, add effects. I want to add a shadow. My shadow will be black. There we go. This part, I'm going to change the font color to this. Again, add a shadow and change the shadow color to black. And there we go. Now I think I still have the butterfly, so let's see. Let's go blue butterfly. And I think it's this one, but you can really choose any element that makes sense for your story. And I'm going to put it right on the home. And I think I have another butterfly on this side. I'm going to get another one. And this time I got to flip it around because you can see this one is flipped the other way. So I'm going to go to flip horizontal, and there we go. Now I have a little blurb here and I'm not going to rewrite it, but basically similar to how you added the text boxes here, you add a text box. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to add a text box, and I'm going to just go up and copy and paste this. I'm going to adjust the size. I'm going to change the font color to white. And I also have a little text box here, which would be a similar idea. So I'm not going to do that. And you can put your name at the bottom as well. So I'm just going to copy these ones over just because. And then this one, I just want to show you how you would replicate this. And I think that's pretty much done. So you want to make sure you do a quick check to see, okay, none of these critical elements are over any of the margins. Nothing is over the barcode here. Once you're comfortable with it, you can then bring up back the transparency for that background layer just so you can see what the actual cover looks like. And I think it looks great. We've managed to replicate my original cover here. And once you're happy with the cover, what you want to do is go to Share, and then you're going to go to Download, and you want to go to PDF Print. Again, you want to download the cover just like how you downloaded the interior earlier. You want to flatten the PDF. And in this case, I have 3 pages here, but I only really need the first page for my cover. And in terms of color profile, I'm going to go to CMYK again, which is best for professional printing. And I'm going to click on Download. And there we go. Now that we have our interior as well as our cover completed and downloaded, we're now ready to hop onto Amazon KDP to upload and publish our book. So once you have completed your book cover and your book interior and have downloaded those files from Canva onto your PC, we're now ready for our next step, which is uploading and publishing it onto Amazon KDP. Right now, what you want to do is log into your Amazon KDP account, and if you don't already have one, you will need to set one up. So once you've logged in, what you want to do is to come down to this Create button and click on it. Okay, so first of all, you need to select the type of book that you want to create and publish. In our case, it's going to be a paperback, so we're going to click on Create Paperback. Now we'll need to fill in this form. So in terms of language, it's English. Our book is in English, so we can keep it the way it is. If your book is in a different language, then you can select the appropriate language down here. In terms of book title, our book title is There's No Place Like Home. For subtitle, I'm going to put A Cute Story About a Little Bear's Adventures Away from Home. I don't have a series for this book, so we can skip this question. Edition number we can skip as well. For author name, you can either use a pen name or your own name. So in my case, I'm going to put Ivy Hang. In contributors, I don't have any, so I'm going to leave that blank. In terms of description, I'm going to put in, There Is No Place Like Home is a cute and engaging story about a little bear named Sally who has always wondered what lies beyond the forest. She decides to follow beautiful blue butterflies to the city only to discover that there's no better place than home. Follow Sally as she explores the city and encounters numerous adventures. This storybook filled with fun and colorful illustrations is perfect for little readers aged 4 to 9. So you can really be as creative and as descriptive as you'd like for your description, but for illustration purposes, this is the description I'm going to use for this book. Now I'm going to come down to publishing rights, and I'm going to click on I own the copyright and I hold the necessary publishing rights. And then primary audience, so it'll be no for this question. In terms of reading age, we did say at the top that it's geared towards ages 4 to 9, so we can just put that in. Minimum age would be 4, maximum age would be 9. Primary marketplace, I'm going to leave it as Amazon.com. So now we need to pick categories which would be most relevant for the book that we're hoping to publish. So we're going to click on choose categories and come here. I think we're going to start off with, so there's a whole bunch of categories. In our case, I think children's books probably going to be the most relevant. We'll now need to pick a subcategory. So since our storybook has a bear in it as the main character, I think I can select animals. Then I'm going to select bears. And once I had that, I'm going to put it in the fiction section just because it's a fictional book. And now we have our first category selected. So we're going to add another category. I'm going to come back down to children's books, and I am going to come to, let's see, literature and fiction. Then we can come to chapter books and readers. Then I'd say for our book, it'd be for beginner readers, but it'll depend on your specific book. You'll have to pick the appropriate categories for your book. And again, it's fiction. So now 2 categories. Now I got to add one last category, and I'm going to come back. It depends. Like if your book actually fits in one of these categories, you should pick one of those as well. In my case, just for illustration purposes, I'm going to come back to children's books, growing up and facts of life, and friendship, perhaps family life, and then I'm going to pick other values and new experiences. Let's pick new experiences, and again, it's fiction. I'm going to save all 3 categories so you can see they've all been listed here now. And now you have to answer these other 2 questions. Does your book classify as any of these types? Low content book. So in our case, it's not a low content book. In fact, this is a high content book because every single page is a completely different page. Low content book is really defined by things like journals or planners where every single page is identical within the book. The second question is large print book. So that's defined by your font being 16-point font size or greater. In our case, I actually used 18-point font size, so I think I'll check this box off, but it'll depend on what font size you use for your specific story, and you can decide if you should be checking this off or not. Okay, so now we want to put in 7 keywords for our book, and these keywords, you want to make them as relevant to your book as possible, and you want to make sure that those are keywords that someone, like a customer, would actually search for when they get on Amazon, and when they do search for that keyword and they see your book, they will think that your book is highly relevant and would seriously consider buying your book. The other thing to consider when you're selecting your keywords is to think about how competitive that keyword is. So I'm going to quickly show you how you could determine competitiveness of a keyword. This is one of the free ways to do it. There are actually many tools out there that you could use, but I'm going to show you one of the easiest way to just quickly gauge how competitive the keyword is. So what you want to do is go to Amazon.com, and you want to make sure you're not logged in because you don't want them to show you results that are based on your previous searches. We want to start with a blank slate. So let's say if I search for storybooks for kids ages 4 to 8, you'll see the number of results that come up. So the smaller the number here, the less competitive this keyword is. So 4,000 is actually pretty good. Anything 10,000 or below is actually not bad. And now let's say if you try a different keyword, we'll try children's books ages 4 to 8, slightly different. And you'll see that the results is 90,000. So this keyword is, for whatever reason, a bit more competitive than the previous one that we just searched for. So between these two, you would want to pick the first one, assuming that the demand is probably the same, because if there are less results and the word is less competitive, you will have a higher chance of ranking your book on Amazon so that people would actually see your book. Okay, so let's hop back over to our form to complete the rest of the keywords. So now I've completed all of my 7 keywords, and again, your keywords might be very different from mine depending on the nature of your story. So once we put in the keywords, we're going to go down Further, under publication date, it's going to ask you whether your book was previously published. In our case, we have never published this book before, so the publication date and the release date are essentially the same. So we can leave it selected at this. And then the next one is release date. So you can either release your book immediately, right when Amazon gives you the go ahead. Once you publish it today, it will actually take up to 72 hours for Amazon to do their checks to make sure that they're comfortable with your book before they allow it to be officially published. So you can either release it right away when that happens, or you can schedule for your book to be released at a later date. And in my case, I'll just release it right away. So I'm going to leave it at this option. I'm going to click save and continue. Okay, so onto the second section of this form. This part on print ISBN, we can either get a free ISBN from Amazon KDP, or we can use our own ISBN. If you don't have one, then you would select this option and click on assign me a free KDP ISBN. Okay, so that's done. Now in terms of print options, we're going to select the ink and paper type. Because we're printing a children's storybook, we're going to select premium color interior with white paper. And moving down, in terms of trim size, the default is 6x9. We're going to select different size because, as you recall, we wanted our book to be 8.5 by 8.5 inches. So I'm going to click on this. And in bleed settings, I am going to click bleed because I do want my illustrations to go all the way to the edge of each page. And in terms of paperback cover finish, I'm going to pick glossy just because I feel that it looks a bit nicer when it's for a storybook. And now we're on to the part where we can upload our manuscript and book cover. So when they say manuscript, that basically just means our book interior. So we're going to go to upload manuscript, go to our downloads, and pull in our interior. Once you've uploaded your interior, we can go upload our book cover. So we're going to select upload a cover you already have and click here, and I'm going to click upload your cover file, and I'm going to pick my cover illustration. All right. So once that's done, you got to answer this last question. Does your cover include a barcode? If left unchecked, we'll add a barcode for you. So in our case, we don't already have a barcode on our covers, so we would want Amazon to add it for us. So in that case, we're going to leave it unchecked. The next section is related to whether or not your book was generated using AI. So in our case, it really depends on which of the illustration options you end up selecting. If you, for example, hired an illustrator, then the answer would be no. If you used some AI, then you should probably click yes. And if you use just elements without AI from, say, Creative Fabrica, then the answer would also be no. And keep in mind that this is really just Amazon wanting to understand how your book is created. Clicking yes or no is not going to cause your book to not be able to be published on Amazon, so I would not worry about that at this point, but you just want to be transparent in terms of how your book was created. So in our case, we did use some of the Canva AI capabilities, just a little bit, but I think just to be transparent and conservative, I'm going to say yes. In terms of text, none of my text was created using AI, so I'm going to say none. So images is where we had one or a few AI generated images with minimal or no editing, one or a few AI generated images with extensive editing, many AI generated images. So in our case, it's definitely not many AI generated images, but it depends. If you end up using Midjourney or ChatGPT to create your characters, then you would probably select many AI generated images. So in our case, it's definitely one or a few. So let's just select one or a few AI generated images with minimal or no editing. And I'm going to put Canva AI in terms of the tool that was leveraged. But if in your case you use Midjourney, you'd want to put in Midjourney. If you use ChatGPT or Leonardo AI, you'd want to put those in. So translations, I don't have any translations, so that would be none. And now we can click on Launch Previewer, which will basically show you what your book would look like, which is one of the most exciting parts of uploading it to Amazon KDP. So as you can see, the book cover, the front cover and the back cover looks great. The barcode has been added for us. And here you just want to check again the margins to make sure none of your critical elements are going over the red line. And in our case, I think we're good. Now we want to move on to the next page. And again, you want to check the margins for basically each of the pages that you've published. And so far, I think everything looks great. And we're good. So let's click on approve. So here Amazon is actually telling us how much it will cost to print each book for us, which is $4.20. So you just need to take that into consideration when you determine your pricing later, just to make sure that it is at least above that price so that you would be making a profit. So once we're comfortable with that, let's click on Save and Continue. Okay, so for territories, we're going to leave it at all territories. For primary marketplace, we're also going to leave it at Amazon.com. And now this is the part where we'll put in our pricing. For storybooks, you can really price it whatever price you want, but you want to make sure you take a look at other storybooks around the same length, around the same style, to see how much they're pricing it at so that your price is competitive. At the same time, you don't want to price it too low, such that it's below your printing costs and delivery costs, such that you make a negative margin, but you don't want it to be too high such that no one would buy it either. So you want to price it just right, and you can always adjust the price even after you publish it, so I wouldn't be too concerned about your initial price. Some people price it really low at the beginning just so they can get the traction going and attract people to click on their book, to buy their book, which will help them rank on Amazon, and then as they rank, then they will increase the price. So in our case, let's just say I want to price it at $11.99 to start off. This will give us a royalty of $2.99 for every sale that we make. This is factoring in the printing costs as well as other costs like delivery costs. So overall, for every sale that you make, you will make $2.99. And then Amazon will automatically populate the corresponding pricing for you in all of the other marketplaces as well. And similarly, you'll just need to make sure that you're making a positive margin. So in terms of terms and conditions, like I mentioned before, once you click on publish your paperback book, it will take up to 72 hours for Amazon to check your book just so they can make sure they're comfortable with your book, that you're not infringing on any rights or that there are any issues with your book, for example, margins or your titles. So once they're comfortable with it, your book should be published within 72 hours and we're done. Now you just need to hit publish your paperback book and wait for Amazon to publish your book. And we're done.
And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more. And I'll see you next time.